delving a little more deeply into friction, what is it really? We've already seen that to some extent the friction has to do with the jaggedness of these materials. And to get this to move to the right, well, we've got to apply a force, and that force has to be large enough somehow to kind of make this rise up. And that's why that the force of friction will approach force normal the worse this gets, because the force normal will be equal to the force of gravity when it's horizontal. So that is the first aspect of this. Now we can zoom in even more closely. Let's suppose we took these materials and we sanded them down and then we set them next to each other. Well, how we would view those surfaces then is we might use a scanning tunneling electron microscope. And what we're looking here actually is atoms of materials. Each one of these are the atoms. We're looking at the electron clouds. And whether these are atoms or molecules, we're looking at the electron clouds. So if you look at this material over here on the right, it looks like they're kind of flat, bumpy, almost like Legos. But you'll notice there's a triangularness to them. They're kind of arranged somewhat like triangles. And there's kind of a certain width between each of the bumps. And if you look at this material, you'll see they're more vertical and there's more of these holes or gaps inside. Well, if you took this material and it's on the ground and you took this blue one on the right, and flipped it upside down and put it on top, that is the intercalation of the surfaces, just like we see up here. Now, this is macroscopic. This is something we can see that's on the order of 1 or 2 millimeters or 1/10 of a millimeter, something like that. But when you look at these, we're talking about 10 to the minus 8 meters, extremely small scale. But you can see they're going to interact with each other and intercalate with each other, and there will be resistance as well. It'll just be less in comparison. But if you were to choose these two materials, you might say this one would tend to have less friction than this one would, because this is smoother by its nature. And this one's bumpier by its nature, so it tend to have more friction. And that's ultimately what's really behind friction.